Good morning. Had to adjust. My name is Beth Manchester Howell, and I am your lay worship leader today. I warmly welcome you to First Parish Unitarian Universalist Church of Bridgewater. I've been a member here for about 25 years, and I serve on the worship committee and on the parish committee. I always get nervous when I get to the what I love about this church part, because I love so many things. And I love that this church comes together to celebrate the values that we have. And today we're going to talk about values around our planet. And I love walking so much, and I am so excited about today's service. So thank you to the Green Sanctuary team for putting it together. Which takes me to our guest speaker today. Welcome, Mr. Miles Howard, our guest speaker. He is an author, a journalist, and urban trail creator based in Boston. His work is focused on the intersection of our outdoor recreation and urban living, making both accessible. In 2022, Miles founded the Boston Walking City Trail, a 27-mile urban hiking route through 30 green spaces in 17 neighborhoods. His writing has been published in the Boston Globe, in National Geographic, the Mountain Gazette, WBUR, and Yankee Magazine. He authors the Mind the Moss newsletter. Before we begin our time of worship, we do have some announcements. So I would like to ask Jenny to come forward first.
I actually saw Miles walking to church this morning. Now I know who the man was, but now it makes perfect sense. So on behalf of the stewardship team, you can see our garden of possibilities. We're into the purple vegetables, trying to go rainbow, but we didn't have anything blue, so we've got it there. And we are currently at $81,000, trying to get to that far row, inch by inch, row by row. If you haven't received a pledge card, please see. I'm going to just put Janet on the spot today because I have to leave very quickly. And you can always email any of us on the stewardship team if there's any further questions. But if you do have your pledge envelope and haven't sent it in, you can mail it or just bring it next week. We just need to tidy up the loose ends, and we have a lot of raking and hoeing to do. That's what I said. Shh, I said that. If you haven't got one, please speak to Janet. Are you listening? Boys and girls, listening ears. 2 of these, 1 of these. Okay, that's it.
Denise?
I have 2 announcements. Well, actually an announcement and an invitation. The announcement is Saturday, April 26th, the Middleborough Unitarian Church is putting on Spring Gala and Tapas. I'm going to put this up somewhere after the show. And it's food, and it's music, and it's skits. It's a fundraiser. Susan Hotchkiss, the music director, is retiring at the end of this year, and this is her last big program. And I went last year, and it was fabulous. It's $40 general admission, $35 for seniors. Remember, you get food, and $25 for students. So I'm going to go. It's Saturday, April 26th, and I highly recommend it. The other one is just an invitation. You're going to hear a lot of music that's pretty familiar to you, and if the Spirit moves you, sing along.
And Reverend Rosemary.
Good morning, everyone. They can't keep me away from the mic. Okay. I will be offering 2 small group ministry sessions next month on May 4th and May 18th. There's just so much going on in our world to process, and this is a curriculum of adult spiritual development courses called A Call to Faith in Turbulent Times, and that is so salient right now. So these will be 2-hour sessions from 1 to 3 p.m. on each of those 2 Sundays. If this is your first time here, you're welcome to be there. If this is your 40-year anniversary of coming, you're also welcome to be there. We have a room for about 8 to 15 people, so that we can have a small conversation, but a lot of perspectives, and there'll be some contemplation and some meaning making. So you can talk to me, or you can see the sign up link in the newsletter if you're interested, and I'm really looking forward to this space together.
First Parish Bridgewater is a welcoming congregation. We proudly fly the rainbow flag to symbolize our welcome to people of all identities, ages, and backgrounds. If you are new to First Parish, we hope you enjoy your experience this morning. We encourage you to fill out the guest book, which is at the rear of the sanctuary, making sure to include your email address to receive church updates. For newcomers joining online, please see the sign-up link that is posted in the chat. We invite all who are here in person to join us after the service for a time of fellowship in the lower parish hall, which is through these doors and down the stairs. This service is being hosted via Zoom. It is being recorded for Bridgewater Cable TV and for YouTube. You can find the link to the YouTube video in your weekly bridging. The recording is turned off during our sharing of joys and sorrows to protect your privacy. In the event of an emergency or an evacuation drill, please leave the building through the main sanctuary doors, or should you need a ramp, through the School Street entrance to my left. You are welcome here. Thank you for joining us. Your presence makes a difference. We will now begin our time of worship with the prelude. It is going to be great. Please join me in the words to light our chalice. We light our chalice to mark this sacred hour as we gather in this historic sanctuary, both in body and spirit,
We connect with the many generations that have come here to explore the divine. Let us join our hearts and have hope in our relationship to each other. It is time to share worship together.
Please rise in body or spirit, and let us join our voices in the affirmation of our covenant.
Love is the spirit of the church, and service is gift. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to speak the truth in love, and to help one another.
Morning. Our opening words today are excerpted from Poems, Please, and that is entitled, What is Joy? Joy is an emotion that encompasses an overwhelming sense of happiness, often transcending individual experiences, to embrace a collective celebration of life and the beauty of nature. At its core, joy represents the unifying essence of humanity, weaving through cultural traditions, festivals, and communal gatherings. This contagious spirit of joy reverberates through the laughter of children playing in a sunlit meadow, the harmonious melodies of a symphony, in the vibrant colors of a bustling marketplace. But the profound significance of joy lies in the ability to bridge individuals and communities, fostering a sense of belonging and kinship. It ignites the soul with an effervescent energy, prompting an appreciation for life's simplest pleasures and fostering an enduring sense of hope and optimism. And now, if you'll please rise in body and soul, and join in the opening hymn, number 38 in the gray hymnal, Morning Has Broken.
I'm thinking about how what I love about this church is that we are so good at solving issues. Now is the time in our service where we share, for the sharing of joys and sorrows, those matters of great personal significance that have touched us, our families, and our loved ones. If you have a joy or sorrow, please come forward to relate. Please join me in prayer. Creator of all, you have blessed us with another season of becoming, another moment of rebirth. Despite the cold mornings and the late snow, leaves bravely work their way out of buds on twigs. And even when the air feels damp and heavy, daffodils bravely stand tall and lift our hearts. I invite you to hold the signs of spring in a moment of quiet meditation. How have your senses called you to appreciate this season of new beginnings? Was it the sound of bird song or the fragrance of the first flower buds? We cannot hold spring forever, but we can find comfort that the beauty of this season will give way to more gifts from the glory of creation. The bright sunshine of July, the first delicacies from gardens tended with love, followed by the crunchy fall leaves, and finally, pine trees covered with glistening snow. We cannot hold any of these, but they will return to us. Each week, we share our celebrations and our grieving together. These joys and sorrows are most often related to our human relationships. Today, we have held each other in love. And let us remember that as we celebrate and hold our human family, we must also tend our earth. Many springs have come and gone without our effort, and yet we have a responsibility to give thanks for each budding tree and spring flower we enjoy. Let us give that thanks in a renewed commitment to protect each fragile season, even if it doesn't come exactly as we expect it. Amen, and blessed be. Each Sunday, we collect an offering for the, I'm so sorry. The musical meditation will appear on the screen. Please remain seated as we sing together. Thank you for your patience. Each Sunday, we collect an offering to support the ministries of this church and the mission of a community organization that shares our faith values. This month, the contributions will be shared with our Kids to Camp Fund. Each year, we contribute generously from this congregation to send children to the Sheep Pastures Camp in Easton.
Good morning. The reading I have for you is from Lisa Sadkin, and it's called Stop and Smell the Roses. And of course, I don't know if daffodils really smell, but, stop and smell the roses. All right, so noticing the good is always a great way to open yourself to the feeling of more joy. But if you really want to take your joy to the next level, practice savoring. You know that saying, stop to smell the roses. Give yourself time not only to acknowledge what's good, but actually appreciate it. Stay in the moment. Bury your nose in the roses and inhale. Studies certainly show that practicing of savoring leads to happiness and increased satisfaction. So getting outside and noticing the beauty of nature is a great way to access joy. If a walk in the woods isn't accessible to you, give a walk in the urban area. There are lots of places there. Look to the sky and try cloud watching. It's with great pleasure that I welcome Miles to our mic this morning to tell us about what he's done about really helping people access all kinds of places to find the joy.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for welcoming me here today. It's an honor to be with you all this morning. So, I'd like to pose a question to everyone gathered here in this cozy sanctuary today. Something to squirrel away for the moment and revisit a little while from now over coffee and munchies, a dark beer at your favorite sports bar this afternoon, or maybe right now, or whenever you have a moment to reflect. How did we get here today? A few hours ago, I did what's become ritual for millions each morning. I fired up my car, I set off into the river of brake lights on I-93 and then Route 24, and I drove across a vague, unfamiliar landscape that many of us glimpsed through our windshields, hurtling along the highways and local roads. The road signs emblazoned with names we're not familiar with, and the malls, offices, and residential towers that we can only glimpse briefly as they emerge from shrubs and deciduous woods along the road, are signs of life, clues on a map that leads to a wide spectrum of treasures. But let's be real. How many of us take the 5 to 10 minutes to pull off the highway and investigate these clues? How often do we stop our cars, climb out, and step into one of those mysterious buildings or the woodlands and wetlands surrounding them, on foot? So many of us live at the mercy of forces that dictate our time and space for wandering, for investigating the places in between our homes, our jobs, and our social hubs. And I'm no stranger to this myself. After the service today, I will be driving back to Boston to help my landlord install a new toilet in our apartment. Something that I've chosen to do and hope that this act of volunteerism will be remembered when it's time for him to consider raising our rent next year. Believe me, I would much rather be clattering across bog bridges in some unfamiliar South Shore marsh and making small talk with the people gathered on one of the observation platforms, toggling their binoculars in hope of spotting a heron stepping out of the tall grasses. But too often, our natural and irrepressible impulse to explore is tempered by the obligations of getting by. That said, there are exceptional moments in life, singular events so seismic and unexpected that our obligations, routines, and structures are literally transformed overnight. 5 years ago, around this time, a novel coronavirus emerged from the landscape and turned most of the world into a patchwork of quarantine zones. I struggle to find the words that properly convey how destabilizing this was for so many of us. The existential panic and anxiety that suddenly reshaped our lives and which many of us have struggled to process in the years since. A lot of us lost our jobs and found ourselves with unprecedented idling time all of a sudden. And at the same moment, stay-at-home orders and out-of-state travel restrictions kept us localized, some of us more so than ever before. As a lot of you probably did here in the Bridgewater area, I found momentary peace during those first terrifying months of the COVID-19 pandemic by walking around the natural spaces in the city of Boston. The rippling expanse of Jamaica Pond, where a lone muskrat builds its nest on the North Shore each spring as thousands of visitors circle the pond on foot, passing by each day. Or the labyrinthine pathways in Arnold Arboretum, where over 2,000 tree species have loomed for more than a century. And of course, I went to the waterside paths of the Charles River Esplanade, which some of you may have visited, I'd imagine many of you may have visited, where so many of us met on the docks in surgical masks for hastily assembled picnics, a discreet bottle of wine, or a raw and unfiltered conversation about how we were doing in that moment. I was hardly alone in seeking out these spaces as if they were oxygen canisters scattered across the Mount Everest summit cone. The green spaces of Boston and so many other cities became secondary homes for people. We lived our lives in these parks, gardens, and tree sanctuaries. It wasn't uncommon to see someone on a bench with a laptop and a phone cradle to one ear, talking loudly about the state of the bond markets, while on the neighboring lawn, a hairstylist took a pair of battery-powered clippers to the dome of a client who sat on a folding chair with a sheet draped around them. And yet, even with all of this unprecedented human activity unfolding in so many of our green spaces, the natural power of these spaces seemed to instill a humility in all of us. Whether it was the latest blooms of daylilies and peonies along the paths, the sound of Boston's famously plump squirrels chittering in the branches overhead, or an invisible hand of wind sweeping through those branches and shaking their leaves loose, there seemed to be a silent understanding among us that the natural world, from which viruses like COVID-19 are born, along with some of the most beautiful things we've laid eyes upon, will always have the last word, even when it's cultivated by landscape architects like Frederick Law Olmsted, the mastermind behind Central Park, Boston's Emerald Necklace linear park system, and the city park as we really know it today. Now, I'm not sure how many of you have logged some serious mileage in the Boston green space ecosystem, but here's a little fact that caught me off guard, even after a decade of calling Boston home. Today, every resident of the city of Boston lives within 10 to 15 minutes walking distance of a green space of some kind. It might be a playground, it could be an urban wild, a piece of intentionally conserved natural green space that's unkempt and shaggy on purpose compared to the more manicured and sculpted parks. But the bottom line is, when you step out of your door in the city of Boston, you can quickly find yourself out of your element and in your community all at once. And the first year of the pandemic, as the first year of the pandemic ground on, this started happening to me more often. As out-of-state travel restrictions remained in place, making it a lot harder to visit the Green Mountains or the Maine Highlands or any of the spaces where many of us habitually seek out restorative hikes in the backcountry, something which I've enjoyed since I was old enough to carry a fanny pack, I got into the habit of unfurling city maps and identifying all the green spaces I hadn't visited before. Places with names that intrigued me and square footage that surprised me. Because even with days and weeks of free time for wandering, up until that point, I had still been a creature of habit, frequenting Boston parks and urban forests that were fond and familiar, meeting up with the same friends in these green spaces, and oftentimes taking the same long walking route back home as the sun went down. But as it became clearer that life would not be returning back to normal after just a few months, I realized that what was fond and familiar would not be enough to sate our collective sense of wanderlust. Even within our own backyards, we would have to come up with ways to chart more adventurous paths to the places in between, the places that evoked intrigue and wonder. One very dark night, as an early winter storm coated Boston in sheets of sleet, I decided to investigate something that had puzzled me for a long time. A mysterious white tower that looked like something out of Lord of the Rings, which stood on a hilltop in Roxbury. I had glimpsed the tower while walking along the Southwest Corridor Greenway into Back Bay many times. It had a tall, pointy roof, and sometimes on a clear night, you could see the profile of the tower against the light-polluted sky. It was 5 p.m., work had picked up again, and I had been stuck at home all day, chugging through Zoom calls and mainlining coffee. I needed a release, and for reasons that I still can't explain, a voice in my head said, "Let's climb to that tower." The streets and sidewalks were a mess, covered in a wintry mix that was quickly hardening into ice. The hill on which the tower stood, Fort Hill, was 2 miles from my apartment by foot. But I was so desperate for something that felt like a true expedition, something I had mostly enjoyed in the countryside, that I instinctively reached for my backpack. Now, some people will insist that going for a hike is something that cannot happen in the city, that it's an exclusively rural activity. But what I can tell you is that in practice, committing to be outside for a couple of hours in the elements can be just as punishing in the city as it would be in the Middlesex Fells or Connecticut's Pechog State Forest. As I set off for Fort Hill around 5:30 p.m., I was wearing 4 layers that gave me a new Michelin Man aesthetic. I had a headlamp fastened to my forehead with plenty of extra batteries in my backpack, along with a second pair of gloves and even more layers in case the sleet got through my jacket and permeated my long johns. It was the kind of adventure for which you're unlikely to recruit a willing friend. And to compensate for this, I decided to use the Southwest Corridor Greenway that I knew so well to reach the foot of Fort Hill, where I would go rogue and continue into lesser-known territory to reach that tower. But even with the familiar sights that materialized along the way to Fort Hill, they were somehow rendered different by all the winter elements. As I watched an Orange Line subway train rumble along the corridor path, it looked like a giant prehistoric serpent with glowing eyes slithering through the storm into the night. Amidst the driving snow, the tower of the Islamic Society of Boston's mosque near Roxbury Crossing Station looked like the high point of a citadel, offering sanctuary in a harsh world. Already, I was seeing the city of Boston through a new lens, and I hadn't even begun the climb to Fort Hill's tower just yet. And it wasn't until later that night, as I threw all my sodden hiking clothes into the hamper and fired up the shower, when an idea crept into my head. What if you could hike across the city from one end to the other? In a way, Olmsted had laid the foundations for such a venture over a century ago, when he created a series of interconnected parks that linked Dorchester, Jamaica Plain, and several other neighborhoods to downtown Boston. Using green space as a bridge from one place to another is an idea which was revolutionary in the post-Civil War years when Olmsted arrived on the landscape architecture scene, but the arrival of automobiles in the early 20th century effectively mothballed the idea. Only now, with widening demand for accessible green space, have cities and towns begun to revisit Olmsted's great idea, imagining how more parks and greenways can enable us to explore more of our urban and suburban landscapes on foot. But here's the little open secret that I'd like to impress upon you all today. Many of these parks and greenways already exist, and they're often just a stone's throw from each other. A lot of them form the backbone of hiking routes, trails across places that we call home. You can discover and explore them today. And after that long, dark winter that took me to the Fort Hill Tower, that's what I started doing in Boston. Things escalated quickly, and sometimes literally. With the help of maps and insider intel sourced from neighborhood Facebook groups, I stumbled upon snarled gems like a hidden stairway through the woods on the backside of Mission Hill, or a jungle-like stretch of woods on the Neponset River in Mattapan and Hyde Park. Sometimes in these green spaces, I would find little unofficial paths that were clearly the result of other visitors walking there regularly, because they wanted to. Urban planners sometimes call these things desire paths, which I find both beautiful and affirming. By spring, I had identified a way to walk nearly 27 miles from the Harvest River Bridge on the Neponset River to the stairs of the Bunker Hill Monument through over 30 parks and 17 city neighborhoods. I started thinking about ways of walking this route as a trail, and a moniker began to form in my head, the Walking City Trail. Because Boston was once called America's walking city due to its maze of sidewalks and park paths that you could spend a lifetime poking around. But even when I crafted maps for this long park-to-park trail and started putting them out there into the world, the trail didn't feel real yet. It felt more like an idea. Another kind of activation was still needed. That July, I invited Boston residents and visitors to join me for a group walk along the core of the new trail, from the tallest hill in Arnold Arboretum to Franklin Park's wilderness and the shores of Jamaica Pond. It felt kind of like picking Powerball numbers when the jackpot hits a fever point, a fun exercise that is unlikely to actually yield much. But when thunderstorms forced me to reschedule the first Walking City Trail hike twice, something shifted internally. I wanted to find out if other people would be willing to venture into the brush and the sticks of the city, on the periphery of the places most familiar to us. When temperatures rose into the 90s and stayed put, the prospect of finding accomplices seemed even more unlikely, but the question lingered nonetheless. It's why I found myself in Adams Park, a green square in the heart of Roslindale Village, on a Saturday morning so muggy that my iced Dunk's coffee cup was producing beads of sweat. And I waited here anxiously. Quicker than I imagined, we went from 1 to 8. The hikers had caught wind of this adventure through different social channels, and they had ventured here from a wide range of places. Wyoma, an African healing dance instructor, had caught 2 buses from Dorchester. Helen, a medication safety systems manager, did what I often failed to persuade my Cambridge friends to do, crossing the Charles River for a Boston gathering. Brianna and Tariq, who walked to the park from their home in Jamaica Plain, were expecting their first baby that winter. And Matthew, who had soon found downtown Boston's Queer Neighborhood Council, had been intrigued by the idea of neighborhood-to-neighborhood hiking and how trails could be a means of bringing people together and fostering civic engagement, of inspiring others to care about the city and each other. It was on that inaugural hike on the Walking City Trail when I started to understand for the first time in my life that it's one thing to chase the mysterious wild places in between, but quite another to embrace the reality that these alluring places are also homes for many of us, for the people in between. Sometimes when we stumble upon a hidden swimming hole or an inexplicable wildflower garden, the presence of other people can feel disappointing, a realization that you won't have this special place all to yourself. But enjoying a thing in solitude is only satisfying to a point. Would green spaces in our cities and towns have been as restorative and nourishing during the most devastating months of the pandemic without all their denizens, human-sized and chipmunk-sized? And how many of us would realize that these places are often much closer to each other than we might perceive, without the presence of other people from places elsewhere to confirm this? When our hardy crew of 8 arrived at the summit of Peters Hill, our shirts already sodden, but our Walking City Trail hike rapidly turning into a mobile conversation, we kept arriving back at that very question I posed to you all earlier. How did we get here? But as we descended into the pine woods of the Arboretum and made our way toward Franklin Park past creeks, train tracks, and strange architecture, it was supplanted by a different question. Where are we going? For some, those words can offer a foreboding ambiguity, a supposition that things won't end well. But in the rustling wilds of the cities, the towns, and all of the places that we call home, those words still ring with a sense of possibility.
Thank you, Miles, for sharing your vision of sharing the outdoors with people of all different persuasions. The closing hymn will be projected. The words will be different, but the melody will be familiar.
Take a Our closing words are by Eleanor Julia Amalia Duzay. If the sight of the blue skies fills you with joy, if a blade of grass has the power to move you, rejoice, for your soul is alive.
And now, please join us please in repeating our closing words while we extinguish our flame.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Our time of worship has ended, but our time of fellowship begins. Please join us in the lower parish hall for coffee and refreshments, and come back next week because it's Easter somehow.
Our big project right now is trying to figure out how we hold events for the cemetery at the end of the
My